I know that you mentioned self-governance earlier. I had wondered if any of your data had pointed to a free market type of governance system providing any kind of more efficient means of governance than having the hands in town halls.
Well, we have to think about what are we talking about. And if we're talking about wheat and rice, or other really very clear private goods, market systems are very effective, and interfering in the market system isn't a very good strategy. And so you need the national government and state government for court systems, because you can't have an effective operating market without ways of resolving contract negotiations and all the rest. And you need, for some purposes, public health inspection. So it's not that they should have absolutely no oversight, but the oversight has to be looked at in terms of what are the problems. So I'm a free marketeer when it comes to really private goods. On the other hand, there are a range of things like policing. That it turns out there are some aspects in the production process of policing that make sense to engage contractually. So when we did our 80 metropolitan area study of police, what we found was the metropolitan areas that had moved to lots of small to medium-sized units producing face-to-face services. So having ridden in more police cars, I think, than anyone in this room, I can tell you that it makes a big difference if you're riding in a small community with an officer who lives in that community and knows it. They show you all sorts of things about the community and where there are problems with some of the youth, things of this sort. In the very big city, they tend to rotate the officers every 28 days. And they don't know anything about the neighborhood. I couldn't, I'd ask them a question, I don't know, I was just put on this neighborhood 2 weeks ago. I don't know anything about it, and I'm going on 2 weeks ago on another neighborhood, so he didn't say who cares, but basically. So face-to-face services, patrol, immediate response, etc., much more efficient with small to medium scale, much more. And we've got a lot of evidence. On the other hand, Crime Lab is something that does have economies of scale. And so some of the litany given when people say, let's consolidate, is, oh, well, you don't want the small little guys trying to do Crime Lab. But when we did our metropolitan area study, we found out they'd already figured it out. And they contracted for Crime Lab. And so they had, in 80 metropolitan areas, we found something like 82 or 83 Crime Labs. So almost all of them had only one. And frequently it was the local hospital. And the hospital already has to have all that expensive equipment. And then they hire a forensic technician. And then they charge for certain kinds of blood tests and things like that. That works out very well. Training. It does make sense to have a training facility for an entire metropolitan area. One, it means that everyone is getting the same basic. Two, it means that Harry, Sally now, and George go through training together, even though they're going in different ones. So there's a problem, and they can, oh, I know some of the people over there. I'm going to call them and just see what's happening. So you have a little bit more intersperse. And a dispatch makes good sense. And we can do that, so you can dispatch officers, especially with GPS and GIS. The dispatchers now have maps right up in front of them of where's the call coming in and who's got jurisdiction there. And so you can have, what we're finding is polycentric systems that have some large and other medium and small are the most effective versus all big and all small. And this is why federalism is such an important concept, because it gets us at a way of looking at complex systems that are large, medium, and small, and getting the right combination at the right level is always tricky. but we need a lot more systems that have that characteristic.
I know that you have a series of principles with respect to how you come up with these nonprofit, non-government, community-based governing organizations for environmental resources. And I know you found a lot of applications for that in developing economy. So I was just wondering if you could maybe talk about those principles and how, the extent to which they're easily replicable in the advanced economy versus the developing economy, just the general challenges of promoting that kind of organization across economies.
Well, my very first research was in Southern California, and it's a pretty advanced modern economy, let's face it. And I was looking at a problem of 700 producers, including oil companies, Standard Oil and several others, and cities and farmers. And the groundwater basin had 11 cities, part of them. There were 2 or 3 that were entirely in, but the rest were all part. It was only part of the county of LA, and of course only part of the state of California. And they've been overdrafting tremendously and all sorts of problems. And they had, it was a very tough problem. They first off created a private association for the purpose of discussion, and they met once a month. And that meant everyone who was a producer was invited. Not everyone participated, but everyone was open. It was open. And as a graduate student, I did a seminar paper, and I went to their meetings, and they finally got used to a woman coming to their meetings. And they got used to being very comfortable with me, because I decided then I was going to do a dissertation 45 minutes away from UCLA, which is great. Watching that, because here were people engaged in market, public utilities that were government agencies trying to serve their communities with water, Shell Oil and other very large oil companies that needed really good water to cool their towers, and they were among the most active to try to get this fixed. And because we have a common law system in the U.S., there is a mechanism in common law called equity jurisprudence. And it's a very important arena that can be used by private corporations or public or whatever. And when you go to equity jurisprudence, you go in and say, Judge, we have a really important public problem. You've got to establish that it's important. And then, but it's not criminal. We're not accusing anyone of criminal acts. And it's not civil in the sense that somebody broke a contract. So we can't use either civil or criminal. We need jurisprudence to address this. Please appoint a water master or a master of law, because it can be used in a variety of instances. And what the master in law does is fact-fighting. And we sometimes don't think how important getting a common understanding of the facts. With the water master, the water master comes up with a draft. And it says you pumped so much over 20 years, you pumped so much over 20 years, you did, or 50 or whatever. And you say, you get it right. So at the discussion of it, you say, it's wrong. And the water master says, show me the evidence. And you present evidence. And if you can't present evidence, you can't say it's wrong. But eventually, through back and forth, you get a report that everyone has signed off to as being true. So now, or if you've not signed off, you can't provide the evidence. You're kind of stuck. You don't think it's true, but you don't have any way of showing it. So the facts are established. Then, if you have facts established, you have much more chance to get in and really talk through what are some of the possible ways of solving it. And very nicely, besides that, it took them still some while. But then that went to the California Supreme Court, that gave them property rights established, pumping rights. As soon as they had that, they could then create a special district. And the special district has a lot of powers to build facilities to recharge